What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Wildly Informed. Appreciate everyone that's tuned in here tonight. We are back from our little mini hiatus there over the Thanksgiving holiday and then a little scheduling conflict last night. So we bumped it back a day. Thankfully, the Wild were very accommodating of that and decided not to schedule a game today, knowing that we'd have that scheduling conflict yesterday. So really nice of them to do that for us. As always, Brett Marshall here alongside Isha Jerome. We got a lot of really cool things to talk about today. A lot happened in the last 2 weeks finally. So as we ended last show, hopefully something happened so we have a show to talk about. And sure enough, a lot of things happened. Some really good things, some not so great things. We'll dig into all of it. But before we do all that, got to check in with Isha. How's it going, dude?
Good, man. Like I said, was supposed to do the show yesterday, but some scheduling issues. I mean, there's worse ways to spend Wednesday than to be stuck in Duluth. And I mean, stuck in Duluth, not due to weather, stuck in Duluth, hanging out with a client, drinking beers at Bent Paddle a little later than expected. So
yeah, sounds like a pretty
not the worst way to spend a work day. I'm not going to lie,
Yeah.
or the end of a work day. And then the weather was actually really good. No snow at all on the way home. And there, if anything, the wind calmed down a little bit last night, and it was more of a breeze. Well,
yeah, it was
less of a breeze, but coming back. But
it was insanely windy in the metro yesterday. It was
oh, dude, I went cold plunging in Superior, and I came out, and literally I'm kind of a walking carpet. Literally every part of me is frozen the second I get out of the water. It was insane.
But
but yeah, nice and chilling. No, solid week so far, and yeah, you said it. We haven't done the podcast for a week and change, and yeah, a lot to talk about now. Wild still top of the mountain as far as the NHL, as far as the division, giving us some scares in games, but still winning, and now getting recognition league wide as the team to beat. There were some people in the last few live chats when I was covering the teams doing the watch parties and commentary who were from, the opposing markets being like, man, at least we, got a point. Like the Vancouver fans, at least we got a point against the Wild, or, at least we looked this good against the Wild. And dude, people here aren't used to hearing that. So that's huge that they're the team to beat right now in the league.
Well, I think what makes the Wild so weird, and listeners of the show will know this, is a lot of times when you play the best team in the league, it's often because they are just hemming you in your defensive zone for the entire game, right? It's an onslaught of offense. You never have a chance to attack. For the Wild, I think it's really unique in that. Does that happen occasionally? Yes, but it's just they're so suffocating defensively. These teams get in the offensive zone. And it's perimeter shot.
You can't get anything going. You can't get anything going, and half the time you're not winning that neutral zone battle either.
Yeah, so it's very weird in that sense. They're not in first place, I think, in a way that you typically see a lot of teams be in first place. And it's very much the cliche of the defense wins championships. That's very much the Wild they're doing right now. They're
full circle to Jack Lemaire, dude.
Yeah, it really is. It's like the OG Wild, but it's just here's.
But they have Kaprizov this time, not friggin'
Gabrick. It would have been Gabrick.
I guess. Yeah.
So it's hey, the offense is Gabrick. Everybody else play defense. Now it's hey, the offense is Boldy and Kaprizov. Everybody else play defense. That's the strategy, and apparently
it's working. It's working. I mean, and we'll tee up what we have coming up in the show here. We're gonna highlight a little negative, but when it's the only negative and you're still winning despite that negative, things are okay. I just want to preface the show with that, Brett, because we're not just looking for things to rip apart here. And if anything, we've been highlighting really good stats. For example, Spurgeon in recent episodes as well. So we're not just negative Nellies over here, but it's glaring enough that we're going to highlight, Bogosian's play later in the show.
Yeah. And the ironic part is how that, when we get to there, the part of how I'm because I know, because my player cards Bogosian, Husadinov, and Lauko are and I think, if you include Ben Jones and Travis Boyd, those guys, they're the only players that are negative in PCS average and cumulative through the whole year. So I've known Bogosian hasn't been great, but I was kind of how bad has he been? And then someone's oh, John Merrill's the worst defenseman on the team. And I was I don't think that's the case. And I'm going to dive into that. And yeah,
and I'll give, and Brett did a really good job of breaking it down here, and you guys will hear about it in a later in the show in the final segment, numbers wise, and then I'll just give my take from just like the eye test as well, because similar thoughts, I think, but also like there are some interesting things that are just highlighted by the numbers, and obviously there's like some glaring things that are just highlighted by the eye test. But that's later in the show. What do we got coming up in the first segment here?
Yeah, so I think two of the biggest stories I think from the past week and a half here. Obviously, probably the biggest is the Wild made a pretty big splash trade, acquiring a very young prospect, David Jiricek, from the Columbus Blue Jackets in exchange for Damon Hunt, which a little bit sad about that. But when it's a player like Jiricek coming back, it makes it sting a little bit less. A first-round pick this year that's top 5 protected. Should the things absolutely completely go off the rails. Smart play by Billy, because you just never know. Good to protect that pick, because that would happen like with was it San Jose the year they trade, or Ottawa, who traded? I think it was Ottawa didn't protect their pick or something when they traded Carlson to like San Jose,
right?
And then like San Jose got like a top 5 pick. And
that sounds like an Ottawa move, to be honest.
Yeah, either that or it was the other way around, one of the two. But so we'll talk about Jiricek. We'll talk a little bit about the injuries to Eriksson Ek and Brodin, and kind of what life has looked like without those guys, and kind of what to expect. What the Wild have to maybe do differently, or who they have to lean on to kind of get through those injuries to those two players. As you mentioned, we will talk a little bit about Zach Bogosian, and then we'll also take a look at the 4 nations, the 5 players we thought made it. So we'll talk about where we think maybe they fit into the lineup now that we can kind of see the whole scope, who's on the team, those kinds of things. So it'll be good. We got a lot of it's very different topics across the board, which I think will be a lot of fun.
I like it. All right, let's get into the analytics.
What we do here is go back.
I was feeling like GTA, Vice vibes for tonight.
Yeah, we need GTA 6 on the horizon eventually here. So
it's coming. And now I was just telling Brett before recording, now I have a computer that can run it. Let's go.
Yeah. I always like the memes. It's like we got X before we got, XYZ before we got GTA 6. So I'm like, what's going to be the new meme once that comes out? We'll have to see. But let's talk about David Jiricek. So big trade, as we mentioned. The Wild acquired Jiricek, right shot D. He's 6'3", 209 pounds, heavy shot. Has had a really good amateur career through Czechia, through World Juniors tournaments. He's been a guy historically that's been a little bit more of an offensive defenseman, and a guy that the Wild
6th overall too, right?
Yeah, 6th overall pick, and I believe in his draft year, from what we've heard from Russo, is that he was 5th on the Wild's draft board that year. So a guy they've long coveted, a guy they went after, a guy that's been rumored to be interested in, and I think before we get to the numbers, I kind of just want to talk a little about the trade, like the price given up. So it's Damon Hunt a first, and then like I think a second, a third, and a fourth. I think maybe, or I don't know.
There were a lot of picks involved. There were a lot of picks involved.
Yeah, but I think that the 2 pieces that matter, I think, are the first and Damon Hunt, and then obviously coming back, I think it was like Jiricek in a 5th. So I think we'll start there. Like just kind of your thoughts on the Wild acquiring Jiricek and the price it took to get him.
So I like it. I think it's an upgraded prospect as far as like the ceiling. Like Jiricek has a 100%. Higher ceiling than that of a Damon Hunt. I mean, he's a 6th overall pick, someone who the Wild, like you said, highly coveted originally. I think it's bittersweet because like Damon Hunt was like the next guy, right? The next guy from Iowa, the most ready prospect in the system right now, who's not in the NCAA. Like Zeev, who's not overseas, like Yurov, like a guy who's in the system that they can use, a guy who we saw play incredibly well during the preseason, a guy who, when given a cup of coffee with the Wild, has kind of checked all the boxes and has developed exactly as planned. And, someone who Brett and I are a fan of. So it was like, oh man, really the guy going is the most ready guy, where I get it. The Minnesota Wild have now an abundance of picks. They have an abundance of prospects. And now they're in the phase of, okay, if these guys aren't going to be part of the future, and let's be honest, Zeev Buim's coming over. There's already not a lot of spots on the back end. clearly Hunt just was not going to be that guy. Jiricek, there was a possibility him being on the market. Wild already liked him. Okay, we're going to solidify and upgrade that spot. In this case, the next guy up in another young and top prospect on the back end. And we're going to use the capital of picks that we have, which at this point, I don't want to say it's extra, but it's extra with how much you have in the cabinet right now coming, and guys who may never make the team. Like I could honestly, see other guys in Iowa be moved, maybe not this year, but next year as well, to just solidify roster spots or to get different prospects that either they've been targeting for a while or wanted. So long or the short of it, I think, maybe a pick or two too many, because Hunt is ready. And is Jiricek ready yet? I don't know yet, to be honest. And I would say, he's played over just shy or around 50 games in the National Hockey League, but
47. No, wait. Nope, hang on. I lied. That's 53.
So clearly the Wild are confident that, okay, he's ready, even if they give him a little bit of a slow burn, give him some practice heavy schedule to start. Don't give him a lot of minutes, right away. But clearly they're confident with him being NHL ready. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I don't think he's going to be worse than what we saw from Hunt, different type of players, but still, I don't think in the grand scheme of things, he's going to be worse than what we saw from Hunt. And like I said, the ceiling is way higher, that he could be a top guy when, Spurgeon's out. Okay, well, now we got Zeev and Jiricek with an aging Brodin. Some of these other guys won't be around, like Chisholm, like Merrill, like Bogosian, right? And, 21 years of age, let's go.
Yeah, I think that's the key here, is that this is a long-term play. And I think that the ceiling is the big part of this. Like, obviously there's a floor here that maybe he's just an okay, NHL defenseman, and maybe he's not a top 4 guy, but the ceiling is this is a legit guy that can just rip bombs from the point, that can play in your top 4.
He's got some.
Yeah, and I think the big thing for the Wild is you look at there's a lot of defensive prospects in this system, but aside from Damon Hunt, we just haven't seen a lot of we haven't seen that next step out of a lot of them, like guys like Lambo, Spacek. They're close, but they're not there yet. I think Spacek he's the only other right shot that's really in the system. So I think that's
another thing too. Yeah, they identified a right shot guy with offensive upside. It's 6th overall. You know what I mean? Top defenseman, top 10 defenseman in the draft. They don't grow on trees. They just got one in Zeev, and now you got Jiricek, and they're potentially going to play. I know obviously Zeev, he's going to come over after Denver. It's not going to be a lot of games, unless they make a good playoff run, which I'm knocking on wood right now. But think about it, they got someone to plug a hole this year and last in Chisholm for free, and they upgrade, giving some picks. Where I was talking to Hoppy earlier today, I'm confident that if the Wild are worried about getting someone in the first round this year, which, let's be honest, Judd's done really good work in the second round, so it doesn't even really matter. If they need to get a late first round pick back, the Wild can do it. They have enough prospects, they have enough capital to be able to do that. So it worries me less of what they gave up versus, all right, let's just hope that Jiricek is a better player at the end of the day than Hunt, because you gave up more and packaged Hunt on the way out to get your guy. But overall, I'm happy with it. I like it. And again, if they want a first round pick back late in the draft this year, or if they just want to get another second back, knowing that, okay, Judd can work his magic, right? That part of how the Wild do business, Brett, is proven, right? That's fine.
Yeah, but and even so, it's this team's in a spot now. You look at the guys that you're going to have locked up. You have Kaprizov likely coming up. You have, Rossi is a good chance of, being solidified here. Kaprizov, you have Boldy, you have maybe Marat Huznadinov. You have guys like Riley Heidt, Danila Yurov, Joel Eriksson Ek. All of these guys, even if you have high-end prospects, who's going to play, right? They need a roster spot. And at some point, I think the decision has to be made of, okay, we think we see a future, right? These guys are planning. I think it's really easy to get lost in thinking about just this year as fans, but we have to remember that these GMs in the organization, they have to think out 3-5 years in advance. Is they might be looking at, okay, what does our opening roster look like in 3 years, right? Is Damon Hunt a part of it? If we have Zeev Buium and Jonas Brodin and whoever else, Jake Middleton. Like if those are your three down the left side, where's Damon Hunt playing? Like, is he your seventh defenseman? Probably not. Right. So I think they saw an opportunity like, hey, this is a guy that we think is good, could play in the NHL, but he's not going to help us right now. And in the future, there's just not a spot for him where, you look at the right side and it's, hey, right now it's Spurgeon, it's Faber, and then it's a little bit murky, right? So it's like, hey, now we're going to add a guy we think that we can slot into that spot. And now you have Faber, Jiricek maybe in 2 years, and maybe you still get a year or two left of Spurgeon. That's a pretty solid top six that you're working with. So I think that's a huge piece of it. And, the first, it's things to give up first. But again, even if you draft a good player, where's he playing, right? This is a team who I think believes their window opens next year. They want to go spend on free agents, among other things. So
let me actually butt in there. No. Before even that, because people think, oh yeah, where the money's coming off the books. Money's coming off the books and it's going right to Kaprizov's pocket.
And
there's money there. Well, and Faber's, Faber's already signed the extension, but the money will be paid out to him next year. But
correct.
Kaprizov's going to make $14+ million a year, and Wild fans have to stomach that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to complain about that. The way he's playing this year.
You say that now, Brett. Say that now.
In 2 years, it might be a different story.
Somebody clip this, Mateo. Yeah. Clip this. All right. I want it locked and loaded because it's not even just unique to Wild fans, hockey fans, right? Roberto Luongo made $5.5 million, and Vancouver Canucks fans literally wanted to burn the city to the ground before even losing to Boston because of his contract alone. # my contract sucks. All right. Yeah. We're talking $4 million.
A little bit before you got into Minnesota scene, but Joe Mauer, hometown kid for the Minnesota Twins, was an MVP type player, batting champ, did everything he possibly could have as a catcher in the MLB, and they still wanted him out of here at the end of his career, just because of the money and people get fed up. So,
what's up, whoever? What did Lazarus say about Boldy? I didn't get a chance to see the tweet before it was deleted.
He basically just questioned that Boldy being on the roster, basically, was it because of Guerin being the GM, and that was there other players that were more deserving, like Tage Thompson and Cole Caulfield, and it's no, Boldy was better than them.
Craziness. Anyways, let's get to Jiricek's stats here.
So I did want to look in a little bit because I think obviously it's easy to talk about Jiricek. The Wild are really high on him. He's big, he's got a big shot, he's had a really good junior career. But as we talked about, he does have a cup of coffee in the NHL. It's about 50 games in now. So here's what his stats look like. There's nothing here that looks great, right? It's pretty middling. Some of it's a little bit underwhelming, not great. There's nothing really that jumps out as wow, this is a steal, right? I don't think anyone thinks the Wild stole from Columbus per se. I think it was a pretty even trade overall. The one thing, the last part on the actual package, I am really happy. I hope Damon Hunt will see some ice time now. I hope this guy gets into the lineup and gets to play a little bit in the NHL.
Columbus has nothing to lose at this point.
Yeah, I Columbus is a team I absolutely root for. I love Dean Evison. I love the team. It's cool that they're our expansion cousins or sisters or brother, I'm going to call it. That. Enough of that aside. So there's nothing that jumps off the table here. So, and it's always hard to compare numbers to the Wild, because obviously the Wild are so good defensively. If you compare his numbers to the Wild, they're going to look way worse. So what we can use is what's in that right column, which is the relative rate to the rest of the Columbus Blue Jackets. So I won't go through all of this. For those of you that are listening, go flip onto YouTube, fast forward to, I don't know, whatever, we're in 20 minutes.
I'll post this separately too, this segment.
Yeah. So if you want to go in and look at 19 minutes in, it's about what we're talking about it here. So relative rates, what they tell you is just where that stat is compared to basically the team average. So I pulled just the defenseman. So that right column is, he had 1.14 fewer goals per 60 than the average defenseman or the rest of the team. So that's kind of what it looks at here. But there's nothing that's really way lower, nothing that's concerningly bad. The knocks in him have been his skating, but as we just talked about, if you're on a blue line with Brock Faber, Zeev Bouillon, and Jonas Brodin, if you can't skate as well, that's probably okay, because you don't have to, right? They're not going to ask him to be a puck here, right? He's probably going to be hey, we have an offensive zone face-off, get out there and rip a clap bomb off the face-off.
For example, look at Middleton. He's a clunky skater.
Yeah.
He's fine. He's fine with Faber because he knows his role. He's not moving the puck up the ice. He's not doing anything cerebral. He's digging deep in the corners and he's fighting in the neutral zone. And every now and then is scoring goals, which is a beautiful thing to watch because that smile is infectious.
Yeah, and John Hines had a really good quote. I think it was in The Athletic, kind of about it too, because obviously the reporters asked him like, "Hey, you worried about his skating?" And he said, "No, I'm not worried about his skating. Like, I'm worried about his skating if it means he can't defend a rush, or if he can't get to the corner fast enough." He's like, "I'm not concerned about those kinds of things. We can coach that, those kinds of things." And you just have to hope, like, hey, he is 6'3", 200 some pounds. Like, you hope he throws his weight around a little bit, goes into the corners, battles, boxes guys out in front. Like, so, and I don't think his skating is like bad. It's just like below average, right? And there's tons of below average skaters that have long, successful careers.
He's a tall, lanky defenseman. Yeah. It's like he skates like a tall, lanky defenseman, bro.
Look at Tyler Myers. The guy's carved out a top 4 career for forever, and he's a horrible skater.
Well, I mean, Tyler Myers. Well, and you know what's funny though? In his junior year, in his rookie season when he won the Calder, he looked like a world beater. Then it just kind of fell off. But no, yeah. Myers, Zadorov, Chara. Who are some of these other tall, lankier guys? Maybe like even Alex Edler for the Canucks was a kind of a taller, lankier guy, and he didn't look that great skating. But they get it done. They got those long strides, and they can get to point B quicker than most guys, even though it's awkward.
Yeah. So I would say and the other thing too, so there's none of these numbers that scare me. Now if he gets put with Zach Bogosian on the third pair, then I'm a little scared. We'll talk about why a little bit later, but I think this is a guy that, he also has been kind of I think he was battling injury, and he's kind of bounced around between the AHL and the NHL. And it sounds like there's been disagreements with the previous regime. We know how hard Dean Evison is on young players and making mistakes. So I think there's a lot of factors in play here too. Talk about a 21-year-old kid. And the thing I always try to say, I mean, if you're not older than 21, it's not as relevant to you, but think back to when you were 21 and how you handled pressure and adversity. And it's you weren't perfect. These are still 21-year-old kids who have feelings, and emotions affect how you play and those types of things. That stuff matters.
Yeah. I will say though, he has been playing pro for a while though. So he's not just a 21-year-old out of college or out of junior. He did play pro in the Czechs, but they probably, babied him a little bit more since he was their star.
Yeah. But I mean, we saw it with Rossi, right? This guy, no confidence 1 year, goes on the AHL, gets right, works really hard in the offseason, comes back, and he's I think he's up to 20 points in 25 games now this season.
Yeah, he's third in scoring on the team. It's wild.
And I always try to say too, I think there's a study out there somewhere where most NHL players don't hit their prime. I think it's forwards, it's 23 to 27. Defense, I think it's actually a hair later. It's 24, 25 to 30. And then goalies, I think it's even later, 26, 27 when they really peak. So there's a lot of runway still for this kid to hit his potential. And I think we as Wild fans forget that sometimes because Kaprizov, Boldy, and Faber came in year one and were awesome, right? But that's not common, unless it's a very, very elite prospect. So, I'm not worried about it. I'm really excited to see what he can do. I mean, obviously, the Wild system is one that, at least at the NHL level, plays a really tight defensive system. And if they can coach him into those systems and find a way to tap into his offense and have another player that can kind of grate from the blue line, I think he's going to be a huge asset. I'm curious to see how much play he actually gets in the NHL this year. It seems like they want him to play. And we'll get into why later. But for me, I wouldn't really want it to be over a guy like Declan Chisholm. I would want to be over a Bogosian or a Merrill. But it'll be interesting to see when he does come in, who it'll be over. If it's in the next stretch.
Well, they have depth in that position. They've been rolling 3 guys all year.
Yeah.
They're going to probably just keep doing it. And he's going to be one of the guys in the rotation and probably given a little bit more rope as far as you had a bad game, but we want to see, you're still young. You're still new. We'll give you another one versus, all right, let's put Merrill or Chisholm back in.
Yeah. And I think right now with the Brodin injury, maybe that factors into him playing a little bit sooner rather than later.
True.
But
no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because maybe and then you can put him in for Merrill and you have a Bogosian, Jiricek third pair. So I'm not worried about it. I think it's a great trade. I think it's the type of risk that's worth taking. The Wild have never really I can't recall the last time the Wild traded for a really highly touted prospect. We've traded for decent young players, the Fiala trade comes to mind, but it's never really been a prospect effect that they've brought in, at least that immediately comes to mind. So yeah, I think it's exciting in that sense. So
for sure. Just quickly want to go to the chat here just to acknowledge you guys and say thank you so much for watching live. We got Glenn in the chat here. He was chiming in saying the national press was critical to give a first rounder, saying they needed at the deadline. Well, I think, and we kind of addressed this earlier, like the Wild have so many prospects in the system that like they have the luxury of not even need the first. Like they could trade Jack Pert and like a third and boom.
Or they trade next year's first. Like if they believe,
but like Jack Pert is not playing with the Wild ever, so like he's going to be traded and he's going to be used in a package eventually too, which is a good. That's why you have Judd Brackett to have the cabinets just full, bursting at the seams, right, or the hinges, I guess at this point.
And like you could trade your first next year, trade future seconds, because as we talked about before, like only so many of these guys can play. Like you don't have to keep picking all the time. Like can it dig into a hole if it doesn't work out? It sure can, but I think they're at that point now where it's like you stock the cupboard and it's time to make the food now. Like you can't just keep putting food in the cupboard and just let it sit there. Like you got to cook the food at some point,
Exactly. Exactly. By the way, Glenn, thanks so much for watching on Twitter. Come over to YouTube and join our live chat here as it is a buzzing. Speaking of, let's move right along.
All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about here, just allude to a little bit, is the injuries that the Wild are dealing with right now. So obviously, Zuccarello, we know, has been out with a busted nut for a couple weeks now. Sounds like he has been cleared to get back on the ice. So that's at least an encouraging sign. He's been skating and
LTIR for ruptured testicle. Like that's one of the worst injuries you could probably suffer as a man.
Yeah. I've taken a puck there once and I thought it ruptured, and that was like one of the most painful things I ever felt. I can't imagine it actually like happening.
But I've never taken a puck. I played a lot of ball hockey and I never wore a cup playing defense. And like I've taken like every season at least 2 or 3. But like again, that's not a puck. So like
and also like mine was like a deflected high school like dump in. This is a Brock Faber like snapshot. Like that's anyway. So it's good to hear that he's hopefully coming back soon. But the big news, obviously, we heard yesterday, Joel Eriksson Ek is going to be week to week with what appears to be some kind of like knee injury, maybe like a re-aggravation of something he's been dealing with. And then Jonas
fucking throwing his body around like a madman in his last in the last game too. So yeah, definitely re-aggravated it after playing like that.
Yeah, and then Jonas Brodin, who we found out via Jake Middleton, is dealing with some sort of back injury.
Even though it's supposed to be week to week, or it was day to day, then week to week.
Yeah, so it sounds like they're pretty much like debating is like, can they give him like cortisone shots and he plays through it, or does he need surgery? Like that.
That's not good.
Like that hasn't been explicitly said, but that's kind of like if you read the tea leaves a little bit of what you read and what you hear, like that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting.
Bro, he just needs to do some cold plunges in Superior.
Yeah, because I think Middleton's quote was along the lines of something like Brodin's back is gone or something, or is shot.
I bet Billy G and the crew like, Middleton, shut the fuck up.
You're like, God, every time if this guy comes back, every time he's facing the board, someone's just coming and plaster him. But
dude, now Kevin Gore's gonna like be out there on the ice and just and everyone just trying to get the scrum going out there when Jake Middleton's doing his interview, because he'll just like speak the truth. Okay, so actually, like while I got you here, quick updates on this injury. Oh yeah, actually, like I saw the doctor working on this. Or you see like Billy Gary like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. But the reality is it sounds like at least maybe through Christmas, hopefully not that long, but for the next handful of games, the Wild can be without 2 of their best players in Eriksson Ek and Brodin. And I don't say like best players lightly. Like if I pulled some stats here, I think we have the graphics we can throw up on screen here. We can start with Ek. Just like what does, if you follow me on Twitter, you've seen this, but I wanted to rehash it here because I just think like this is important to look at. Like this is what the Wild look like with and without Ek. I will preface this in being like, this is not stats in games that Ek played and did not play. This is stats whenever Ek is not on the ice. So the games he didn't play, and when like he's playing in a game, but it's like it's the second line's out there instead of the fourth line's out there. But like the numbers, the differences here are like pretty stark. Like you look at like the ones that stick out to me really are the offense. Like this is a team that scores almost a goal more per hour when he plays at 5-on-5. They're almost a half a goal per hour, expected goal per hour more. Defensively, not like huge changes. But we do see like we go from about a 50-50 split in high danger chances, Corsi, expected goals, and then it jumps up to like 55%, 56%, 52% with Ek on the ice. So like the fact of the matter, this is a guy that drives offense, right? Like that's definitely his strength. He's a great forechecker. He okay in the face-off dot. We know he's a really good two-way player that can help break pucks out, limit chance in the defensive zone. And for a team right now that basically is, their offense is running basically through him, Boldy, and Kaprizov, like to lose one of those three, like that's a pretty significant blow. I feel like this is for a team that's already like not doing much offensively, to lose one of your key offensive play drivers. I think it's going to create for some very boring games. I hope you like watching 2-1, 3-1, 2-0 hockey games, because I think that's kind of the direction that we're heading in here without Ek.
I mean, yeah, unless Freddie Gaudreau continues to score, then, he'll be that secondary scorer. And one thing I want to add too is, when he was out for a couple games early this year, Zuccarello was in the lineup. So it kind of made up for there was another offensive body in there where the lines weren't shuffled around.
And the blue line was
much.
healthy, right?
Blue line was healthy. Yeah. Whereas now it's we're in the thick of it. But you know what? Overall, again, any other year in the past 5 years, in even years where the Wilds have had successful seasons, I would be more concerned. Whereas this year, it's so far they've been okay facing adversity. Maybe this is that big, every team has an injury test at some point, even the best teams every year. Maybe this is that one that's okay, you really are missing two pillars, not just complementary pieces and other really good players, but pillars. And even if, for example, Brodin comes back, if it's keep this guy healthy enough to play or back surgery, that's still not the Brodin pillar that they need to win.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's a good point there from Glenn in the chat too. You mentioned Gaudreau maybe stepping up. I think Rossi is going to be the other one that's really going to have to step up.
Well, and he, in fairness to Glenn, he has this entire season.
Yeah, but I think the big thing now, it's X usually the first one over the boards for a penalty kill, for a power play, for a face-off.
Yeah, Rossi will be that next guy up to
defending a lead. So it's those are pretty big shoes to fill. It's funny because it's easy to say because they're such different sizes that they play a different game, but honestly, I think a lot of what Rossi does well, I think is a lot of similar things to what Ek does well. He's kind of a diet Ek, but maybe a Coke Zero or a Pepsi Zero version of Ek.
I would imagine. I would imagine, Brett, if you ask other teams, is Rossi hard to play against and just annoying to play against? I would say that they say yes to both,
sure.
And very much the second, because you can see him he's lippy out there. He's talking, and he just always looks pissed off or he's competing, right? So
and a lot of his shots come from front of the net, same areas that Ek does.
Yeah,
he doesn't do it all quite as well as Ek, but I think if you look at who's the most similar center that they have, I think it is Rossi. So he's the one I'm really looking at to step up, I think. And then beyond that, it's Ken Hartman or Gaudreau, or I'd love to see Murat Huzdinov find some offense. I'm not gonna rehash that anymore, but these guys got to step up. And I'm curious to see who will, and maybe it's just Kaprizov and Boldy just do even more. Who knows? I don't know. So
now on the back end, though, I mean, it's tough to replace someone like Brodin.
Yeah. So this one is the numbers here. I don't think they're not as big of a difference. The really big one here is obviously the goals, just the raw goals against per hour, 1.87 with Brodin on the ice, 2.37 with him not on the ice. But again, you look at, it goes from a team that's about 50-50 to a team that controls a solid amount of the play with Brodin on the ice. And I think this is from the last 2.5 years is where I pulled this data from. If you transition that to this year, these numbers look even way lower. Brodin has been the top. Him and Spurgeon are two of the top 5 defensemen in pretty much every on ice defensive metric, and we've documented that pairing and how good they've been. So it's a big part of it. But yeah, so they're gonna miss him. There's no doubt. I mean, this is a guy again. He doesn't play power play, but he's arguably your best shutdown defenseman. He's so good at skating, moving the puck, keeping up with guys like Makar, McKinnon, McDavid, these fast skaters. He's the one that can stay with them, shut them down, keep them to the outside. So, here it's, Sean Merrill and Zach Bogosian and, David Jiricek got to step up. I think Declan Chisholm, who is currently kind of stepped in alongside Spurgeon, I think has looked really good.
I think he's good too.
Yeah, I don't think he's been perfect. I think there's still mistakes, and I think there's a little bit of he hasn't played a lot with Spurgeon, so it's kind of learning those tendencies, learning to play with each other a little bit. But He had a really, really, really good game against, I think it was the Chicago game. Chisholm was just phenomenal in that one. Their offensive and defensive metrics were great. So I think he stepped in admirably well. So I think if he can continue to play, I would say an elevated level for him. Like I think he's playing some of his best hockey we've seen this season. I'm sure the consistent games is helping with that, but he's the one I'm really looking forward to. And then just hoping that third pair can just kind of at least hold it down and not be a liability.
Yeah, no, for sure. Jordan saying Boldy needs to step up. He hasn't scored much in the past 7 games. So, Brad, this is a good segue into talking about the Four Nations, because I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, Boldy actually just undeserving of a spot. He's just getting special treatment because of Billy Gare and because of John Hines." What is your response?
LOL. Like a guy that has 11 goals, 24 points in 25 games, a +9 rating, like expected goals rates above like 55%, like can play left wing, right wing, power play, penalty kill. Like I don't
throws
know
the body around. It's like, okay, not finding the offense here tonight. Okay, I'm just gonna separate everybody from the puck and play insanely good defense as well. It's like, man,
yeah, like what else do you want him to do? So
yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5.
That wasn't all on you, by the way, Jordan. It was a good segue because we are going to get into the Four Nations here.
Yeah. No goals in the last 6 games for Boldy, but he does have 4 assists in that span. So I agree. I think you want to see more out of him, but I think the Wild offense as a whole has looked a little bit meh.
Oh,
coming with the offense and that stuff. So
your mic was glitching out for a sec there, but I think we're good.
I think we're good. Okay. Yeah. So Four Nations. I think we can get into that. That's a good transition. So well, since we already talked about Boldy, let's start with the US. So he did make the team. I mean, this US roster, when we talked about this a couple weeks ago and we were kind of debating, whether we thought he deserved to get in, like this US team looks absolutely insane.
It's stacked.
Like when you're talking about guys like Tage Thompson, like Cole Caulfield, other players that like didn't make the team, and then you look at like, well, who made it over? I mean, you're still looking at guys like Kyle Connor, Jake Gensel, the Kachuk brothers, Chris Kreider, JT Miller, Brock Nelson. Like this team is deep on the wing. And I think the thing that obviously Billy G watches Matt Boldy play every night, so he's going to have an affinity for him. But as I mentioned before, I think what just makes him so useful to this team is just his versatility. Like this is a guy who can take strong side faceoffs in a pinch. He can play the left side. He can play the right side. He can play in the power play either as like a flank guy or a net front kind of like bumper position. He's seen a cup of coffee now playing on the penalty kill, and he's been really good. He's kind of been their leading scorer, I think. At the other, like the World Cup of Hockey, or not the World Cup of Hockey, but the international that happens like during the playoffs.
Yeah, the World Championships.
Yeah, the World Championships. He's been solid in those as well. So I'm really excited to see where they use him. I think like in terms of like pinpointing what line I think he plays on, like he's the one I'm having a harder time.
Well, and honestly, it doesn't matter because he's going to be. It's like it doesn't matter like fourth, third, second. It's like his role is going to be a power forward on that team. So.
Yeah. Where would I like to see him? I think a line with him and Eichel would be really cool. I think you could look at guys I think that do a lot of things similarly with the two-way game, kind of a little bit, the physical grittiness that they bring. And maybe it's like a Chuck brother on the other wing, or
I like that.
Another one I think would be really good to be
Eichel, Brady, and Boldy. Would be, that's an insane line.
Gensel would be another one I'd be cool with seeing too, is another guy that's not afraid to shoot. So, but I mean, like you said, he could pretty much go with anyone as long as it's not like Kreider. I'll be pretty happy. So it'll be cool. It'll be fun to watch him. I think hopefully getting him in the spotlight will just get some people to appreciate just how good this kid really is. Like I'm still wowed every game. Like just watch. Like if you don't watch like carefully, if you're just kind of watching what's going on, because there's so much. Like see if you can kind of ISO Matt Boldy on a shift and just watch like the little plays,
the little things. Yeah,
like he's like breaking up passes with his stick, like keeping a play alive, like his ability to like keep plays going or disrupt plays with his stick are like insane. Like I can't believe some of the stuff he does. It's just like watch him, just watch everything he does in a shift and how he impacts like where the puck is and where things are going.
Yeah, it blows my mind that there's even I'm not even gonna mention the name or Twitter handle because I don't want to give him any credit. But there's like I feel like there's people who are in the media who are like trolling at this point, being like so critical of him, even this year. And it's just like, we're like, man, he's second in
But else do
scoring.
you want him
Yeah, he's second in scoring on the
on
team.
the best team in the league?
Yeah, he's doing all these things that Brett
He's
just
second
outlined.
leading scorer in the It's like,
and
I don't
yet your argument is, oh, but he's just scoring goals against San Jose.
Yeah. Better contract, Boldy or Eck?
I can't reply to you. By the way, Glenn, this is why I want you to come over to YouTube, man, so I can reply to you in the chat too. I was going to say both S tier for value. Neither is better. They're both S tier value.
I think at this moment, for the sheer fact that it helps the Wild's cap situation, it's Eck. But I think in 2-3 years, Boldy at $7 million is going to look like an absolute fleece. Like, this is a guy that probably would hit, if he hit the open market right now, he's probably making close to $9-10 million bucks.
So I guess Michael Curtis does not agree that Boldy should have been taken, but
no, he's saying I think some of the other guys, I think the ones that have been a lot of criticism are Kreider, Miller, and Nelson, like the two guys from New York, one from Long Island. I think
Kreider this year, I don't know.
I believe it's 10 goals and 0 assists.
Yeah,
that he has this year, and I think like a large chunk of those have come on the power play. So maybe that's his role. Like, he's the fourth line right wing. Maybe he doesn't see a ton of 5v5 play, but he's on their top power play because that's what he does. Nelson, I think, is like the versatility, like power play, penalty kill, fourth line, veteran leadership. I don't know if I fully understand the who's the other one we were talking about. I don't know. There was somebody else, but yeah. So I don't know. Like, it's like, I think it's easy to be like, oh, they didn't take the All-Star team, but it's like, that's how you lose, is when you do take the All-Star team.
Yeah. I mean, look at Canada's World Junior last year.
Like, you have to
went full All-Star and left some key possible guys out. And
obviously Boldy's not a role player, but you have to have guys that could adapt to playing a more bottom six shutdown type of role. So we'll see.
Yeah, leave it to Jake Middleton hot takes to tell us the truth.
Yeah. I think Russo said the opposite, is that it actually is serious. And
during the last before the Vancouver game, he said day to day, and then the next day he said week to week.
Yeah,
and then now it's like oof.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Brock Faber also making the team. Surprise.
Yeah. So Faber, I think we thought he'd be pretty solidified in this. Like, the defensive core that the U.S. has is absolutely insanity. You have 2 Norris Trophy winners in Quinn Hughes and Adam Fox. You have Charlie McAvoy, who's been in that conversation before. You have Jacob Slavin, who probably should get a lot more Norris love than he historically got. Like, he's awesome. Zach Werenski, who is back and healthy and like having a Norris type of season.
Yeah, when he's healthy, he's great.
Yeah, and then Noah Hannafin, who is in his own right a very solid defenseman playing. I think he's on Vegas now. Had a really strong run in Calgary. Like, you're talking about like 5 guys that
and Carolina.
And Carolina. So you have 4 guys, or 2 guys that have won a Norris, 2 guys that probably could have. You have one in Faber who, probably somewhere in his future there's one potentially. Like, where does he play? Yeah, like I don't think he's playing on the first, second pair. Like, I think he is probably the third pair right shot guy. I don't think he's going to play in the power play given the other options that they have here.
And that's okay.
I think he might. I could see him being played on the penalty kill. Like, if I'm the US, like I would just feel great about like rolling 3D pairs as much as I can at 5-on-5, keeping those guys fresh. But I think like the fact he's a right shot, the fact that he munches so many minutes, plays against top competition, much like Boldy, I think this is going to be a really good wake up for like people I think knew he was good last year. Obviously, he was in the Calder conversation, but I think having the opportunity to actually watch him against the best players and some of the best players in the world is going to be a nice eye opener and just a nice. It's awesome for him. Like, just I mean, who would have thought this? When the Wild traded for him, that Brock Faber would turn into the guy that he is. So excited for him to make it, and I would imagine a Werenski Faber would be a fun third pair. I think.
Yeah. Speaking of best in the world, I mean, the Wild right now have the best goaltender in the world in Philip Gustafsson, and I still find it hilarious that ESPN had Wallstat higher in their projected goalie lineups or like goalie rankings rotation.
Yeah. We talked about it a little bit even when we previewed, but
but Philip Gustafsson, he's going to be the guy, and
well, maybe we'll see. Dom of the Athletic does not seem to think so. I sat a little back and forth with him about that today, about Gustafsson, and he had Gus as like the third goalie on that team. So
I think with his momentum right now, like you I know
I'm right there with you.
I know it's a tournament, and I'm not even being biased here because at the end of the day, I want Canada to win. So like,
Right.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
But like, I think
The U.S. has Hellebuck. We're set. I don't give a fuck.
I mean,
That
with
guy's
his momentum, with his momentum right now, I don't care if it's international play or not. Like for a goalie, it's confidence is key.
Yeah, and he's playing great. And he's going to be battling with Linus Ullmark, who last 2 years one of the best goalies in the NHL. This year he's been horrible in Ottawa. Markstrom is, I think, just like he's got the job done, and he's got the job done in New Jersey so far. But like they aren't where they are because it's not like Gus, where like Gus is like him and Kaprizov are probably the reasons the Wild are where they are right now. And
he's stolen a couple games, yeah.
But he's stolen some games. He's leads the league in goals against, leads the league in save percentage. And I always take those with a grain of salt because I like to look at goal save above expected. He's like, depending on the model you use, he's between like 3rd and 5th in the league in that category as well. So he's been phenomenal. I believe he's like 3rd in wins or something. I think like he's been great. I think if you're Sweden and like you said, if he continues this, even if it's not quite at this level, like if he even like takes half a step back, like I don't know how you can look at the seasons that those other 2 goalies have had and been like, yeah, we're gonna go with one of them, unless you're doing like experience. But the debate I got into with Dom was like, well, Ullmark has a history of this, and I was like, well, Gus kind of does too. Like
he's
I think
been on his fair share of international teams. I'm pretty sure he has world championships every year that he's not in the playoffs, right?
Well, and I'm even talking like we're 2 years removed from a Gus potential Vezina win, right? Like the only reason he maybe didn't get as much consideration is he didn't play that full season, right? Like he kind of came in late in that, he came over in the Talbot trade and didn't play as many games as some of the guys who were in the top 3.
He's in early running this year.
Right. And I think he has to be a top 3 for it right now. So it's like, So we've seen him now do it in 2 separate seasons. So now that to me that says, and I said this all of last year, it's like Gustafsson is not this bad. Goaltending is voodoo.
Yeah.
Like we might look at next year and he might be shit again. And that's the way goaltending goes. Like look at Bobrovsky was shit, really good again. He's shit again this year. Like it just happens. Like goaltending cyclical, and like they ride the highs and lows probably more than a lot of other players in the league do. It's it's like pitching in baseball or quarterback in football. Like it's a very tough position to play and to be consistent at year in and year out. But I think Gus is a higher end goalie, I think, than people give him credit for. And I think you look at how just banged up the team was in front of him, a coaching change, your best defenseman was hurt all year. Like those things matter.
It was a bad year.
Yeah. So, and I don't, did he, I mean, he was bad too. Like it wasn't all on the team in front of him. Like he was bad, but he's rebounded so well. I personally think he's earned the spot, biasly or not. But we'll see. I mean, there's still 2 months until this tournament's played, so a lot can change from then to now. Maybe Ullmark refines his form. I mean, there could be injuries. You never know. But I think if the tournament started today, I don't know how you wouldn't have Gus in between the pipes, at least game 1.
Yeah. And, I mean, moving on, Joel Eriksson Ek, I mean, health permitted 3rd or 2nd line. I mean, Elias Pettersson has kind of bounced back. He had a slow start to a season with the Vancouver Canucks. He's basically back to point per game and looked really good against the Wild. I mean, the other night it was, I mean, especially on the power play, it was like him and Hughes running the show. So I mean, whether Pettersson's first line center, second line center, just more of a role in the top 6, I understand it. But I mean, we talked about in the opening segment just how good Joel Eriksson Ek and what he's been bringing to the Wild overall and how much better the Wild are when he's in the lineup. I mean, for all those reasons is why you can make a case that he can be in the top 6 for this Sweden team too.
Yeah, and I think he's a guy I love to have, right? Because we've seen him play with, we saw the grief line, right? With Jordan Greenway and Marcus Foligno, Eriksson Ek being an elite shutdown line. Didn't score a ton, but just made other teams' top lines irrelevant. But then we've seen on the last 2 years, we've seen him shift where now he's playing with Kaprizov and Boldy, right? And still thriving, like still doing all the right things. So I think it gives him a lot of options, right? Like, because if you look down the middle, like you said, they have Elias Pettersson, and the other 2 that they have are Mika Zibanejad and William Karlsson. Zibanejad has been dog shit this year.
Even though like his, like you look at the points and you're like, oh, it's whatever. Like, dude, I've even like to follow some New York fans on Twitter while they're playing, and like everyone is dogging him. Even if he scores, they're still dogging him.
Yeah, like he's been garbage. So I mean, I think if you had you looked at this coming into the year, like, yeah, he's probably the 3C. It's probably Zibanejad, Pedersen, then Eriksson Ek. Now I do wonder if maybe he does get a look maybe on their second line. I think he's somewhere in their middle six. I think he's either their 2C or 3C. We'll see. But really cool for Ek, obviously, to get in there. And, again, just another player that maybe a lot of people don't have enough appreciation for. It'll be nice to see him kind of get the spotlight and get some time and maybe I think Sweden's maybe the sleeper in this tournament if, you look at their blue line, and I think, if the offense up front can squeak a couple out and, if Gus can hold it down for them, they could be the sleeper, but I do think US is still the favorite, at least for me.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is an Olympic appetizer, and what's crazy is like, you look 2 years ahead for the Olympics, dude, Ek's going to be a scary guy. Like he's going to be like, Sweden's Bergeron, you know what I mean?
Yep.
That's
So the last Wild player that did make the roster, which was one we weren't sure about, was Jonas Brodin. So he does make it in. One of the 7 defensemen selected. We debated. We compared him to some of the other options like Campus Lindholm and Rasmus Anderson and some of those guys that made it. Ekholm, I think, another one. But Brodin got in. Really exciting. I do think, though, that he's probably their 7th defenseman. If you just kind of look at what they have and the roles they need to fill, I think he does probably fit into the 7th defenseman.
Which is fair.
I think Anderson may be the one he could play over, but Anderson, I believe, is a right shot where Brodin's a left shot, and I think they have a lot of those, so that maybe gives an edge there. But obviously, also playing injured right now. But Russo asked the Swedish GM, because obviously with Eckert too, but their expectation, I don't know how much they talk to the Wild's medical staff or those types of things, but the expectation is that those two are back within the next 2.5 months. So
yeah, well, I'm sure you have to be in conversations if it's like mid fucking season. You know? I mean, IOC probably not, but like a little random IHF tournament. Yeah, you'd think so. The IHF is sanctioned at least, right? It's a world tournament.
Yeah,
it's just they haven't been posting about it. That's why it's interesting.
Right.
Anyways.
Yeah. I was just excited to see that, I think to see Sweden recognize just how good Jonas Brodin has been defensively and realizing that, like, hey, you need an all-world shutdown defenseman to stop Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel and Austin Matthews and, Sasha Barkov and all these guys that you're going to be playing against. Like, you can't just have 6 offensive defensemen and expect to win. So
that was points too. It's not like there's no offense to his game at all. It's like, no, like he can get involved. He can pinch. He will get involved at times. His hockey IQ is just through the roof, which is, I think, is one of the most important things for a defenseman, and the fact that his skating is just chef's kiss.
Yeah, and if you do, and like I said, I think he's a 7th, but if he's not, I think you look at it's probably maybe he's the guy you put with an Erik Karlsson or a Victor Hedman, like these guys who have kind of abandoned their defense a little bit, but like, hey, you get a really responsible defenseman, let those guys go be a 4th forward because you have Jonas Brodin back there to back things up. So
yeah, absolutely.
All 5 players we thought had a chance made it, so that's really cool. I don't know the breakdown by team about like how many from each team made it, but I doubt there's very many teams that had 5 or more than 5. So pretty cool for the Wild to have good representation. We've seen it, a lot at the World Juniors with our prospects, and it's cool to see it now at the highest level with a lot of representatives making their squads.
Well, and it's like, if you think about it, if there were more than just 4 nations, like think about how well represented, the whole tournament would be. Like obviously with Russia, Kaprizov would be there.
Austria, Rossi would be there.
Austria, Rossi. No Finns, but
no.
But anyways, still.
Any Czechs? Well, not yet.
Not yet, but hopefully spot check.
and Jiricek now too.
Yes, well, yeah, I guess Jiricek probably even more than spot check. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. So who knows? In a couple of years, when the Olympics come back, maybe we'll have even more. Because I would imagine Brodin be the one I'd be unsure of if he makes the next one or not. Just because where he is at in his age, and just Sweden's always just so good. And there's guys like who's the one in Detroit, Edmondson, I think, who I think has looked really good alongside Moritz Seider. But he'd be the one. But I think the other 4, like I think Faber, Boley are locks for the future, like Eriksson, because I talk about Gus as long as things don't. How funny would it be if it's like Gus and Wallstedt? But
I mean, I know it's only 2 years. Zeev's probably too young, but maybe gets invited to a camp.
Yeah, and there is something too. I don't think it's as much with the forwards, but I think we talked about this a little bit too when we were talking about guys getting in. Is like there's something to like obviously Devon Tays made Team Canada. Is like is it to play with Makar, right? Like we've seen, you and I think
Chris
up like,
Crosby got on the top line in Team Canada because he was Crosby's boy.
And I was surprised that Hyman didn't make it for that reason, but I think he's had a little bit of a down year, so that might have potentially played into a little bit. And I think they actually looked like they did opt for like a little bit more like grit for some of their bottom six. But like, so to your long-winded way of saying, like if a Bulliam Faber pairing is the reality, although for what we've seen now, it could be Middleton Faber for a long time. But if it is Bulliam Faber, like maybe that's a plus for like, hey, we could have these two who play together 25 minutes a night on our international team. We have to do that. So
watch, Tom Wilson's going to make Canada's Olympic team.
Insanity.
The IHF will love that. All right. Last segment here. Let's get into Puck Your Opinion.
I just want to say Puck Your Opinion.
What do we got?
I love that it's just like the AI voice that says puck. Like that it just makes me chuckle because you could have had anyone saying it, but the fact that it's just like the AI, like
just simple.
Like it's like
puck. I think it's the Windows voice.
Yeah, it's like the robo voice when you call like a customer service line or something, or chuckle. Yeah. So for Puck Your Opinions, my opinion is that Zach Bogosian is the worst defender on the Wild right now, and yes, that means worse than John Merrill. And I have data to back it up. So it took me like 20 minutes to figure out how to organize this chart to make it make sense. But I think this is a pretty good way that I did it here. So what we have here is a chart, 5-on-5 stats with the 3 Wild defensemen who've played the most with Zach Bogosian and what their numbers look like when he's out there with him and then when they're out there with somebody else. So we'll start with the glaring one here, Jonas Brodin. Like a little bit more goals per hour, but I think that's more PDO related because if you look at the expected goals, it goes from it's 1.8 for Brodin when he's with Bogosian without him. So it's Spurgeon or whoever else or Chisholm or that goes up to 2.48. Expected goals against goes from 3.02 with Bogosian down to 1.34, which is like an insane, like elite rate. The expected goal share you see there goes from 37.4 and doubles to 64.9%. Like that's almost quite literally double, right? It'd be 37.45 would be half of 64.9. So twice as much possession when Brodin is not on the ice with Bogosian. Chisholm is the one who has the most like benefit, but I think that's actually more because Declan Chisholm is good.
He's helping uplift.
Yeah. So like the goals for and against are actually worse when Chisholm was without Bogosian, but again, I think there's signs of positive regression there. If you look at the expected goals against, again, it's like 0.75 more 0.8 fewer expected goals against per hour. The expected goal share goes from 51 to 56. And then John Merrill, I think, is the really big one there too. Like John Merrill, better across the board, except in expected goals for when he's playing without Bogosian versus with him. Like John Merrill has been historically bad. Like John Merrill is a better this is a really simple way of showing like when these two are like if Merrill's done with Chisholm or whoever else, like he's not the anchor here. It's Bogosian. Like the point of this is to say like no matter who Bogosian plays with, he's made them worse than whoever else they play with, which means you are the anchor. And for whatever reason, the Wild like what he does. This is just what he does 5-on-5. I've pointed this out a lot. The penalty kill, I think, is another area where he's been horrible. Like
I don't know why he's on the PK. To be honest, I'm glad you brought that up. And the biggest thing for me, and again, I'm just like straight eye test here, Brett, is like he's just like I will agree with you that he's probably the worst player, if not the worst defenseman on the team. Like, yes, I agree. I'm not going to pretend to defend that. He's the slowest player on the team, even like from the offense too. Like he's just slow. Now, is he doing a lot of things right, or at least getting in position and trying to do a lot of things right? I will say for the most part, yes, he is trying to dump the pucks in like the right direction. He doesn't bumblefuck it. He doesn't like mismanage it, but he's slow to getting to spots. Like, so who's DeBrusk's goal the other night? DeBrusk's goal. Bogosian, he was there to get the rebound. he literally swung. He was just too slow in his swing that Pettersson beat him to it, got the backhand, and that's where DeBrusque got the, got the rebound. Just there's so many cases of like you were just too slow to the play, whether that was bringing it out, whether it was that you're checking and stuff. And again, that's not the only reason, but that's the biggest glaring thing, just again, from the eye test to back up some of this stuff as well. Whereas like maybe the Wild and why they have confidence in him is like, hey, you still are employing what we're telling you to do. And hopefully some of the younger guys that we're putting you with in the rotation can make up for the speed. I don't know. That's what I see anyways.
Well, and he's benefited too. I mean, the Wild have a 94% save percentage when he's on the ice. Like Gus and Fleury have bailed him out at times. That's, I believe, I have the note here that 94 on ice save percentage is the 16th highest among defensemen who've played at least 305 on 5 minutes. Middleton and Faber are 2 ahead of them, but if you look at their numbers across the board, like, is it high? Yes, they've got a lot of saves, but they're also doing a lot more to prevent shots, generate more at the other end of the ice. So, you just look at like speaking of like across the league, like his Corsi share 44.7%. That's 16th worst in the league among defensemen. 107th in expected goals against. The Wild, he's at 2.65. The Wild, his team are at 2.03. So you're looking at more than half a goal per hour when Bogosian's on the ice versus on the bench compared to the rest of the entire team. Is the 13th worst expected goal share among defensemen, 43.2%. That's 10% worse than where the Wild are as a team. So it's just a wonder to me. Like these numbers are free to look at. Like it's pretty obvious that like the fact of the matter is when he's on the ice, the Wild are a worse team. And I think to your point, like the net front stuff, like that goal wasn't even strength. Was that an even strength or was it a power play goal?
That was even strength.
Yeah, but like he has a lot of those same problems on the PK. Like I think like he's been on the ice, I think, for like 4 of the last 5 PK goals against. And I want to say 3 of those have been because, as I talked about when the Wild PK was struggling, there, the goal for the backside defenseman is to get in between the forward and the goalie, box him out, make sure he can't get the rebounds. And 3 times he lost his guy in front of the net, and that guy either tipped it or shot on the rebound and scored or provided a screen. Like, but it's like, hey, if you even simply tie that guy up, box him out, push him out of the way, let Gus see the puck, make sure that guy doesn't get the rebound, those goals don't happen. But it's just like you said, he's a little bit late. It's just like he's not processing the coverage quite quick enough. And I think a thing that's easy to forget is like, was he solid last year at times? Yes. But the Wild traded for him because Tampa Bay had him as their 7th defenseman. So, this isn't a guy that's like to me, needs to be in your lineup every night, but for whatever reason, something, I like a lot of the things John Hines has done, but continuing to play Zach Bogosian, especially on the penalty kill, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And there's just a lot of data out there that just says he is a liability, and the saving grace might be.
Why not make him one of the guys in the rotation versus the
100%.
guy? And maybe the plan is for Jiricek to be the staple and Bogosian be part of the Merrill Chisholm rotation. Or hopefully Chisholm becomes maybe that guy too. Because like you said, I thought this way last year too. Mind you, limited data, but like still he played a good chunk of the season. Like I think he's fine. Is he like you said earlier, is he perfect? No, but I think he's perfectly fine to be a guy that you can roll out there every game.
Well, yeah, and I mean we have his numbers here. So like without Bogosian, so this isn't, this would 210 minutes without him. He has 78 minutes with him. So in those 210 minutes, 52.8% Corsi share, 58% high danger share, 56.8% expected goal share, only 1.63 expected goals against per hour, only 1.71 actual goals against per hour. Like those are top 4 numbers for like 90% of the league, what Declan Chisholm's doing. Now, how much of that is because he got to play with Jared Spurgeon, who's like the best defenseman in the league right now? Analytically, probably a little bit, but the fact that you can play tough minutes alongside Jared Spurgeon and keep up with it, I think says a lot more. Like, because who couldn't do that? Zach Bogosian. Like,
no,
he got
for
that
sure.
He failed, right? So, yeah, like you said, I would just, I think he needs to stop getting a free pass from, the coaches, and I think the fans too, because he's the big guy, right? Like he's the rugged defenseman. But like same thing with Merrill.
Because you're big doesn't mean that you should just play PK, especially in a fast game.
Use it. Like I don't recall last time I saw Zach Bogosian go out and staple a guy to the boards or completely like push a guy out of the front of the net, right? Like you're big, use it, right? Like
Yeah,
I don't care if you're
Foligno
big, if you don't
uses it.
use it.
Look what
Right,
Foligno
like
was
we've
doing
seen
to the
Foligno.
Canucks the other night. He
Yeah,
was
Eriksson
hunting them down with fucking whale spears, dude.
Yeah,
Throwing
Eriksson
them at them
got
more.
pissed off. He threw his weight around and got into things, but like I just know. So
Might have
I want to.
aggravated his knee, unfortunately, again. But
Yeah, but
dude, the Foligno hits were those were nice. Who else? There was somebody else who threw their body around too. That was like random, but let's go. Oh, I can't. Dude, it might have just been our Lord and Savior Freddie Gaudreau, who literally can do no wrong. This so far, and again, people might roll their eyes, but like my favorite player to watch this season, because I know every game he is going to give you 110%, and he has his looks every game too.
Yeah,
and obviously,
I've loved the way
Kaprizov
he's
does.
played.
Obviously, like the bigger name guys do, but that's expected at this point, right? But like the Gaudreau this year, man, like it on stream, I really play it up. Like,
yeah, well,
and he's been awesome. I think he's like fifth or sixth in scoring right now on the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think where do I have him? He's been climbing
He's
up.
Fourth in scoring, tied with Zuccarello right now. Let's go.
He's been climbing up. He was for a while there, but his PCS on the year, he's averaging 0.85, which is like that's a really solid number, like per game. It's just behind Foligno. It's ahead of Johansson, ahead of Trenin, Lauko. Like he's been good. I mean, there's not a lot you can complain about them. So like
he's been quick. He's been quick this year. Too.
He is doing everything you want a player making $2 million to do. And I think that's cool. So
dude, he's playing like a $4 million player right now.
Yeah, I think you're going to see the confidence that he's 1 point off his point total from last year. Already as many goals, needs one more assist, and he has his goal. He hits his numbers from last year. Like
no, if there's a guy who, again, we were talking about guys who don't necessarily need to elevate their game, but a guy that maybe even the coaching can lean on.
Maintain.
Yeah, but even right now, I'm saying like without Eck in the lab. Okay, well, elevate Gaudreau's game a little bit because he's playing that same tenacious style, and he's fast. Like he's quick, and that's what you need these days in the league.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I saw Dylan Laux of the Hockey News had. Let's see.
By the way, guys, as Brett looks that up, I just put in the live chat here. If you're watching on YouTube, check out Brett's vlog on Substack, his weekly Wild wrap-up. That is in the chat. It's also in the description of the podcast if you're listening to us tomorrow on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts from. It's also in the description on this live stream on YouTube. We'll share it before we hang up the skates here one more time, but just wanted to remind you guys.
Yeah, so the Lions in practice today without Eck and Brodin and Zuccarello and Lauko. We had Kaprizov, Rossi, Boldy. Love it. Great at 10 out of 10, no notes. Then it gets really rough after that. We have Foligno, Hartman, Johansson, Shore, Gaudreau, Trenin, and then Boyd, Huznadinov, Jones. With Middleton, Faber, Chisholm, Spurgeon, Merrill, Bogosian, and then Jiricek was rotating in.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the best team in the National Hockey League right now.
And it looks like they were also testing both Bogosian and Jiricek on the left side, I think, to see if either of them could play on the offside. So maybe looking to play one.
Oh, we just lost you. Your mic cord right at the end. At least we went an hour.
Yeah. All right. I think it's back.
Okay, you're back.
Yeah. So we'll see. It's going to be rough. Thankfully, game one is Anaheim. Like if you're looking for a way to get acclimated to life without Brody and Eck, playing Anaheim's not a bad thing. Although I think the last time they played Anaheim, like I think it was like the second period, they just got like shelled. And then kind of rebound in the third. But
that was a weird game. I feel like the Wild definitely took their foot off the gas in that second period.
It was a little bit of we're playing Anaheim type of mindset, I think, there for a little bit. But I mean, it's going to be rough. But, luckily for the Wild, they've banked points in 20 of their, or whatever, is it 21 of their first 25
They
games,
can't lose in regulation, bro.
Yeah, they haven't much. But, even if they do go like 500 with these two out, like they're still going to be in a really good spot. Like, I'm not delusional enough to think that the Wild are actually the best team in the league. Like I'm not that naive. Like they're doing everything I said that they would if everything broke right. And this is the first major hurdle that they've had all season with these injuries. Because I said if they got better goaltending, if the special teams improve, which they have a little bit, and if they stay healthy, they'll be a much better team. But so far, the health, was good up to this point, and now we're in that little bit of that first, all right. Thankfully, a lot of the division teams, I think of guys have dropped too. I think Winnipeg's without Ehlers. The Stars just lost Sagan for it sounds like the rest of the season.
Yeah, they said 4 to 6 months. So he's
yeah. So thankfully, I shouldn't say thankfully. I don't like, as much as I hate Winnipeg and Dallas, I don't like seeing players get hurt, especially good players. Ehlers, Sagan, those games against those teams are more fun when everyone's playing, right? So, but thankfully, we're at a time other teams are dealing with the same problems at the Wild. Maybe to the same extent, probably not, but
every team deals with injuries in this league too. Yeah, no, for sure. This was a good one. We caught up on a lot. I imagine, it's gonna. With how the best team in the league is shaped right now, as we saw that amazing top tier, Tampa Bay Lightning, Florida Panthers looking level roster that you just read out. I imagine next week we're going to either have a lot to celebrate or a lot to cry about, a lot to dissect nonetheless.
Yes, I think that's a good way to put it.
There you go. All right, guys, like we said, go check out Brett's weekly wrap up, his blog, and your player cards. Anything else you want to pump here before we hang up the skates?
No, I had a really fun time writing the weekly wrap up this week. I took a look at just kind of the last year under John Hines, and just kind of what's changed the most from him or from Evason to him. The things that were I was actually surprised at their actual analytic numbers. If you look at the 19 game sample where Evason got fired to the first 20, I think at the time of the writing, it was 24 games that the Wild had played up to that point. The numbers were actually very similar, but there were a couple other notable things outside of the 5-on-5 play that I think are really contributing to the Wild success. So I went into some of those things, dove into some of the numbers. The penalty kill is the big one, but probably not in the way that you think. So really fun. That's free to read. All you got to do is subscribe. If you want to send me some cash to say thanks for the work, I'd appreciate that. But it's free to subscribe, and it drops in your inbox every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. So.
There you go. I'll quickly plug my other project. You can check out my second channel. The sign is right over there, City Life Project. Check it out. I will be streaming this weekend covering combat sports. If you guys dig combat sports, check it out. But I also post other stuff. Like today, I posted a whole vlog back in 2016. I hiked 50 miles for 6 days, Brett, on this crazy trail on the west coast of Vancouver Island, British Columbia. There's some pictures there. I found the old footage and put together a vlog and kind of just documented and gave some history on the trail. I also cover combat sports, like I said, live and highlights and beer content. Actually brought one of the beers that Hoppy and I brewed with Lupulin Brewing for the state tourney flow. I brought one can back to Canada and my friends tested it. And we posted a vlog here on that. So check out my second channel, The City Life Project, as well. We'll be live all weekend. But anyways, this was a good one, Brett. I'm excited to get back into the groove of things, even though, holiday season, we'll probably take, Christmas off, guys. But no, we're rolling. But we're rolling here.
I think Christmas is. I think it's on a Wednesday.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think we talked about that. So yeah, well, obviously we'll take Christmas off, but we got the Four Nations. I will be covering so much World Juniors. So Brett, the World Juniors is my Christmas. I could actually care less about.
I love it.
All I care about is the World
Juniors. I love watching.
And for those who are south of the border, for Americans, which is most of our audience here, it's if you guys are hockey fans, like Brett, you guys are glued to your TV for World Juniors. Yep. But for Canadians, it's as important to us as Olympics. It's more important to me than my team making the Stanley Cup playoffs every year. So I will be covering a ton of games, doing watch parties. We'll be doing rundowns on all the games and things like that as well. And I know Z is going to be heavily involved in it. So subscribe to the channel. We have videos covering prospects, Wild, NHL, college hockey, and yours truly here. Analytics on Wildly Informed, but that's all I got, Brett.
Yeah, I think kind of based on what you said, I think Canada views the World Juniors kind of how Minnesotans view the state tournament.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Like it's you look forward every year. It's a big event. You're really excited about it. I think the difference is the whole country's coming together to root for. But I suppose if you look at the state tournaments, everyone coming together to root against Edina. So, there's
The
some
cake
similarities
eaters,
there.
bro.
Yeah, I have to be slightly nice to Edina because my girlfriend does teach in the school district. But
I thought you
aside
were gonna
from
say she was from there.
no, I would never. But
Does the same. Like I put it. I dated a Toronto Maple Leafs fan once. Never again.
never again. Yeah.
Never again.
The school and the school and the staff and the kids are all great. So I have to give them a little bit of respect when it's due. But that's it. That's where I draw the line.
Oh,
there,
you're way
so.
too nice. You're way too nice. All right. Well, is that it?
That's all I got.
All right. I'm out of here. See you guys.
Later.